Chapter 9 of the People of the Abyss. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Peter Yearsley. The People of the Abyss by Jack London. Chapter 9. The Spike. First of all, I must beg forgiveness of my body for the vileness through which I have dragged it, and forgiveness of my stomach for the vileness which I have thrust into it. I have been to the Spike, and slept in the Spike, and eaten in the Spike. Also, I have run away from the Spike. After my 2 unsuccessful attempts to penetrate the Whitechapel casual ward, I started early, and joined the desolate line before 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They did not let in till 6, but at that early hour I was number 20, while the news had gone forth that only 22 were to be admitted. By 4 o'clock there were 34 in line, the last 10 hanging on in the slender hope of getting in by some kind of a miracle. Many more came, looked at the line, and went away, wise to the bitter fact that the Spike would be full up. Conversation was slack at first, standing there, till the man on one side of me and the man on the other side of me discovered that they had been in the smallpox hospital at the same time, though a full house of 1,600 patients had prevented their becoming acquainted. But they made up for it, discussing and comparing the more loathsome features of their disease in the most cold-blooded, matter-of-fact way. I learned that the average mortality was 1 in 6, that one of them had been in 3 months and the other 3 months and a half, and that they had been rotten wi' it. Whereat my flesh began to creep and crawl, and I asked them how long they had been out. One had been out 2 weeks and the other 3 weeks. Their faces were badly pitted, though each assured the other that this was not so. And further, they showed me in their hands and under the nails the smallpox seeds still working out. Nay, one of them worked a seed out for my edification, and pop it went, right out of his flesh into the air. I tried to shrink up smaller inside my clothes, and I registered a fervent though silent hope that it had not popped on me. In both instances I found that the smallpox was the cause of their being on the doss, which means on the tramp. Both had been working when smitten by the disease, and both had emerged from the hospital broke with the gloomy task before them of hunting for work. So far they had not found any, and they had come to the Spike for a rest-up after 3 days and nights on the street. It seems that not only the man who becomes old is punished for his involuntary misfortune, but likewise the man who is struck by disease or accident. Later on I talked with another man, Ginger we called him, who stood at the head of the line, a sure indication that he had been waiting since 1 o'clock. A year before, one day while in the employ of a fish dealer, he was carrying a heavy box of fish which was too much for him. Result, something broke, and there was the box on the ground, and he on the ground beside it. At the first hospital, whither he was immediately carried, they said it was a rupture, reduced the swelling, gave him some Vaseline to rub on it, kept him 4 hours, and told him to get along. But he was not on the streets more than 2 or 3 hours when he was down on his back again. This time he went to another hospital and was patched up. But the point is, the employer did nothing, positively nothing, for the man injured in his employment, and even refused him a light job now and again when he came out. As far as Ginger is concerned, he is a broken man. His only chance to earn a living was by heavy work. He is now incapable of performing heavy work, and from now until he dies, the Spike, the peg, and the streets are all he can look forward to in the way of food and shelter. The thing happened, that is all. He put his back under too great a load of fish, and his chance for happiness in life was crossed off the books. Several men in the line had been to the United States, and they were wishing that they had remained there, and were cursing themselves for their folly in ever having left. England had become a prison to them, a prison from which there was no hope of escape. It was impossible for them to get away. They could neither scrape together the passage money, nor get a chance to work their passage. The country was too overrun by poor devils on that lay. I was on the seafaring man who had lost his clothes and money tack, and they all condoled with me, and gave me much sound advice. To sum it up, the advice was something like this: to keep out of all places like the Spike. There was nothing good in it for me. To head for the coast and bend every effort to get away on a ship. to go to work if possible, and scrape together a pound or so, with which I might bribe some steward or underling to give me chance to work my passage. They envied me my youth and strength, which would sooner or later get me out of the country. These they no longer possessed. Age and English hardship had broken them, and for them the game was played and up. There was one, however, who was still young, and who, I am sure, will in the end make it out. He had gone to the United States as a young fellow, and in 14 years' residence the longest period he had been out of work was 12 hours. He had saved his money, grown too prosperous, and returned to the mother country. Now he was standing in line at the spike. For the past 2 years, he told me, he had been working as a cook. His hours had been from 7 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. and on Saturday to 12:30 p.m. 95 hours per week, for which he had received 20 shillings, or $5. "But the work and the long hours was killing me," he said, "and I had to chuck the job. I had a little money saved, but I spent it living and looking for another place." This was his first night in the spike, and he had come in only to get rested. As soon as he emerged, he intended to start for Bristol, a 110-mile walk, where he thought he would eventually get a ship for the States. But the men in the line were not all of this calibre. Some were poor, wretched beasts, inarticulate and callous, but for all of that, in many ways, very human. I remember a carter, evidently returning home after the day's work, stopping his cart before us, so that his young hopeful, who had run to meet him, could climb in. But the cart was big, the young hopeful little, and he failed in his several attempts to swarm up. Whereupon one of the most degraded-looking men stepped out of the line and hoisted him in. Now the virtue and the joy of this act lies in that it was service of love, not hire. The carter was poor, and the man knew it. And the man was standing in the spike line, and the carter knew it. And the man had done the little act, and the carter had thanked him, even as you and I would have done and thanked. Another beautiful touch was that displayed by the hopper and his old woman. He had been in line about half an hour when the old woman, his mate, came up to him. She was fairly clad for her class, with a weather-worn bonnet on her grey head and a sacking-covered bundle in her arms. As she talked to him, he reached forward, caught the one stray wisp of the white hair that was flying wild, deftly twirled it between his fingers, and tucked it back properly behind her ear. From all of which one may conclude many things. He certainly liked her well enough to wish her to be neat and tidy. He was proud of her, standing there in the spike line, and it was his desire that she should look well in the eyes of the other unfortunates who stood in the spike line. But last and best, and underlying all these motives, it was a sturdy affection he bore her. For man is not prone to bother his head over neatness and tidiness in a woman for whom he does not care, nor is he likely to be proud of such a woman. And I found myself questioning why this man and his mate, hard workers I knew from their talk, should have to seek a pauper lodging. He had pride in his old woman, and pride in himself. When I asked him what he thought I, a greenhorn, might expect to earn at hopping, he sized me up and said that it all depended. Plenty of people were too slow to pick hops, and made a failure of it. A man, to succeed, must use his head and be quick with his fingers, must be exceeding quick with his fingers. Now he and his old woman could do very well at it, working the one bin between them and not going to sleep over it. But then they had been at it for years. "I had a mate as went down last year," spoke up a man. "It was his first time, but he come back with £2.10 in his pocket, and he was only gone a month." "There you are," said the hopper, a wealth of admiration in his voice. "He was quick. He was just naturally born to it, he was." £2.10, $12.50 for a month's work, when one is just naturally born to it. And in addition, sleeping out without blankets, and living the Lord knows how. There are moments when I am thankful that I was not just naturally born a genius for anything, not even hop-picking. In the matter of getting an outfit for the hops, the hopper gave me some sterling advice, to which same give heed, you soft and tender people, in case you should ever be stranded in London town. "If you ain't got tins and cooking things, all as you can get will be bread and cheese. No blooming good that. You must have hot tea and vegetables and a bit of meat now and again, if you're going to do work as is work. Can't do it on cold wittles. Tell you what you do, lad, run around in the mornin' and look in the dustpans. You'll find plenty o' tin.